Prepare for a journey through 20 extraordinary lives, people who broke boundaries in civil rights, arts, and culture, while quietly navigating a hidden truth. Let's dive right in. 1. James Baldwin. James Baldwin, born in Harlem in 1924, was a literary force who confronted racism and inequality with searing honesty. His books, such as Go Tell It on the Mountain and The Fire Next Time, are considered timeless masterpieces because they refuse to hide the harsh realities Black Americans faced. Baldwin's prose was both lyrical and direct, revealing the toll that prejudice took on individual lives. He wrote with passion about themes like love, faith, and betrayal, showing that personal identity was inseparable from social upheavals. Yet beneath Baldwin's public persona lay a personal story he rarely shared. He didn't pin a label on himself and never publicly confirmed his attraction to men, although many close to him were well aware. Instead, his writing offered oblique clues. Giovanni's Room depicts a tender love between men, illustrating the complexities of human intimacy. Readers sense that Baldwin was pouring his heart onto the page, even if he kept his private life ambiguous. Perhaps he feared a backlash that might undermine his powerful social critiques, or maybe he believed his work spoke more loudly if he remained unlabeled. He ultimately lived as an expatriate in places like France, partially to escape the stifling homophobia and racism that choked his potential in the United States. There, he continued shaping modern literature with essays and novels that championed equality and human dignity. Although Baldwin never publicly declared a gay identity, his influence endures, and so does the quiet mystery of what might have been, had the world he confronted with such bravery been more welcoming of his full self. 2. Josephine Baker. Josephine Baker, born Frida Josephine MacDonald in 1906, emerged from the impoverished streets of St. Louis to become a global superstar. Famed for her daring banana skirt dance in Paris, Baker enchanted audiences with her irrepressible energy and radiant smile. Beyond her iconic performances, she displayed boundless courage. During World War II, she used her celebrity status to gather intelligence for the French resistance, smuggling secrets in her sheet music. This audacity earned her medals and an honored place in French history. Offstage, Baker led a whirlwind personal life that fascinated the public. She adopted a multi-ethnic family, her Rainbow Tribe, and married several men, each union attracting headlines about her unconventional approach to love. But whispers persisted of romantic entanglements with women, fueling speculation that Baker's famous on-stage confidence extended to private escapades. She never confirmed or denied these rumors, preferring to cloak her personal affairs in mystique. Perhaps she recognized that her precarious stardom, built partly on the allure of exoticism, might collapse if she openly challenged conservative ideas about sexuality. Yet Baker was no stranger to confronting injustice. She spoke out against segregation, famously refusing to perform for segregated audiences in the United States and working alongside civil rights leaders. Still, she understood that challenging homophobia might have risked her career in ways the public wasn't ready to accept. So she guarded her deeper truths behind a veneer of glamour. Despite her secrecy, Baker's fearless style on stage and her equally brave resistance work remain legendary, while the full scope of her heart's secrets remains an enigma. 3. Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes stands among the giants of the Harlem Renaissance, using poetry, plays, and essays to celebrate Black culture and critique American racism. Born in 1901, some say 1902, in Missouri, Hughes developed his creative spark early. penning poignant verses that gave voice to the everyday struggles and dreams of African Americans. Works like The Weary Blues and Montage of a Dream Deferred channeled the rhythms of jazz and blues, capturing the essence of an evolving Black consciousness. His lines were accessible yet brimming with profundity, forging a path that many later writers would emulate. But for all his public candor, Hughes was notably reticent about his personal life. Rumors circulated that he was gay, pointing to the coded language in some of his poems that sympathized with society's outcasts and outsiders. In an era racked by racism and strict moral norms, being both Black and queer multiplied the dangers he faced. Evidence suggests close male friendships and letters hinting at deeper affections, but Hughes never publicly confirmed any romantic or sexual preferences. 4. Audre Lorde. Audre Lorde, born in 1934 to West Indian parents in Harlem, described herself as Black, lesbian, mother, warrior, poet. Yet that powerful self-definition evolved over time, reflecting a complex inner odyssey. In earlier years, Lorde followed a socially acceptable path, marrying a man and starting a family, even as she privately wrestled with questions of her sexual identity. Poetry became her conduit to speak about injustice and identity, culminating in groundbreaking works like Sister Outsider and the Cancer Journals. Her words crackle with fearless confrontation of racism, sexism, and homophobia, forging a literary arsenal that resonates with the marginalized. Lorde challenged readers to reject societal norms that perpetuated oppression, urging them to embrace their multifaceted identities. For her, silence was akin to complicity. Still, it took time before she publicly embraced her own orientation. She eventually became a vocal advocate for lesbian and gay rights, demonstrating that personal truth-telling was an inherently political act. By claiming every layer of who she was, woman, Black, queer, Lorde shattered the tendency to view identity as a singular category. She refused to remain silent in spaces that demanded hush. Yet the process of emerging as an openly gay figure was far from simple or immediate. Only in her later years did she speak unabashedly about her relationships with women. While she confronted formidable backlash, she forged a legacy as an outsider within, a poet who turned personal truths into universal calls for liberation. Her journey from silent conformity to outspoken activism underscores just how fierce and courageous her convictions became. Yememe Rainey, Ma Rainey, born Gertrude Pridgett in Columbus, Georgia, circa 1886, was a groundbreaking blues artist whose raw, soulful voice shook America's music scene in the early 20th century. Dubbed the Mother of the Blues, she captivated audiences with evocative lyrics about heartbreak, survival, and the sweet relief of letting the good times roll. Through classic tracks like Boll Weevil Blues and C.C. Rider Blues, her powerful contralto reverberated across segregated theaters, giving a sense of pride and release to those who faced adversity daily. However, beyond the commanding stage presence and flamboyant outfits, Ma Rainey's personal life hinted at a taboo truth for her era, her romantic interest in women. One of her famous songs, Prove It On Me Blues, boldly suggested she was into female companionship, a sly musical confession that defied social mores. That 1925 track challenged her listeners to question the lines between friendly camaraderie and deeper intimacy. Though she never publicly declared herself gay or bisexual, these lyrics and reports of an all-female party for which she was briefly jailed teased at her private desires. Why didn't she ever directly out herself? Possibly because the early 1900s offered almost no safety net for a Black woman who publicly defied heterosexual expectations. especially one on the precarious edge of show business. She risked her career, her personal safety, and her legacy if she admitted the truth outright. Instead, Ma Rainey deployed her music as a subtle rebellion, raw, unapologetic, and tinted with suggestions of a forbidden identity. Her influence resonates to this day, ensuring she remains a seminal figure who blurred lines both in musical style and social norms. 6. Barbara Jordan. Barbara Jordan, born in Houston's Fifth Ward in 1936, surged into the political spotlight as a formidable voice for justice and integrity. After completing law school, she became the first black woman elected to the Texas State Senate in 1966, and soon jumped to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1972. Her electrifying speeches during the Watergate hearings showcased her razor-sharp intellect and unwavering commitment to upholding the Constitution, at times reducing the nation's most powerful figures to stunned silence. Jordan's stature and statesmanship transcended typical partisan boundaries. She championed immigration reform and tirelessly pushed for civil rights, using her resonant voice to call for a united, equitable America. Yet while she radiated public confidence, Jordan was intensely private off the record. It was quietly understood among close associates that she shared her life with Nancy Earle, an educational psychologist, for over 2 decades. However, Jordan never publicly acknowledged that personal detail. The 1970s were not an era kind to openly gay politicians, especially black women who already carried intersectional burdens. Jordan also faced intense scrutiny as a political trailblazer in a society reluctant to see a woman, let alone a black woman, yielding real power. She likely recognized that any revelation about her orientation might overshadow her legislative goals, or worse, end her political career altogether. Even in retirement, her silence persisted. Despite that guarded personal life, Jordan's legislative achievements and iconic oratory left an indelible mark on American politics, her hidden identity reminding us how constrained even the brightest public figures can feel in unveiling the full depth of who they are. 7. Alvin Ailey. Alvin Ailey transformed modern dance, infusing it with the vibrancy of African American cultural expression. Born in Rogers, Texas in 1931, he grew up amid poverty and racial segregation, a backdrop that seeded his choreographic vision with both sorrow and hope. By the late 1950s, Ailey had formed the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, unveiling works that married spiritual music, gospel, and the raw emotional force of the black experience. His masterpiece, Revelations, soared to global acclaim, weaving a narrative of suffering and redemption through stirring choreography. Yet for all his artistic brilliance, Ailey maintained a haunting secrecy around his private life. He navigated the social minefield of the mid-20th century, when being openly gay could derail both reputations and livelihoods, especially for a high-profile black artist. Close friends in the dance world were aware of his orientation, but Ailey never confirmed it publicly. As a result, the themes of loneliness, yearning, and transcendence in works like Blues, Sweet, and Cry might have doubled as expressions of his personal struggle. His later years were marred by health issues, and he ultimately succumbed to AIDS-related complications in 1989. Tragically, even in death, he tried to hide the cause, instructing friends and colleagues to list a different reason on his obituary so that the stigma wouldn't eclipse his dance legacy. Despite the shroud around his true self, Ailey's artistry remains an act of defiance and celebration. Each performance by his company reaffirms his place as a transformative figure who gave breath and motion to stories that society often sought to silence. Right? Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, born in Arkansas in 1915, revolutionized music by blending sacred gospel fervor with the gritty edge of rhythm and blues. A child prodigy, she performed in church revivals from the age of 4. By the 1930s, she had relocated to New York and was dazzling club audiences with a Gibson guitar slung across her shoulder, belting out gospel messages in a style more raucous than reserved. Her groundbreaking approach to guitar playing heavily influenced what would later become rock and roll, impacting icons like Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, and Johnny Cash. Yet, beneath Tharpe's public image as a sanctified gospel singer, a more complicated narrative quietly lurked. Gossip followed her, suggesting deep emotional ties with Marie Knight, the dynamic vocalist who joined her on stage for epic gospel duets. Though never explicitly confirmed, many believed they shared a romantic bond. Tharpe never outright addressed these rumors, likely mindful of the fierce condemnation that awaited a same-sex relationship, particularly among devout Christian audiences. The tension between her fiery spiritual music and her hidden private life cast a unique aura around Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Her wedding ceremonies, some staged as elaborate public spectacles, only added to the enigma. She may have harnessed the commercial potential of her public marriages while privately cherishing connections that couldn't be acknowledged. Whatever the specifics, her dazzling showmanship and the joyous energy of her guitar riffs still ripple through music history, reminding fans that behind her radiant persona was a woman who carried a guarded truth. 9. Billy Strayhorn. Billy Strayhorn's name may be less recognized than Duke Ellington's, but his musical fingerprints are all over the golden era of jazz. Born in 1915 in Dayton, Ohio, Strayhorn had a knack for composition from an early age. While Ellington was the frontman of a legendary orchestra, Strayhorn joined him in 1939 and played a behind-the-scenes role in creating iconic tracks like Take the A Train and Lush Life. In collaboration, they sculpted a lush orchestral sound that enchanted audiences around the world and shaped big band jazz for decades. Despite his central role, Strayhorn rarely stepped into the spotlight. He was openly gay within his inner circle, an audacious stance for an African-American man in the mid-20th century. Yet this openness seldom extended to broader society. Strayhorn seemed content working in Ellington's shadow, deflecting the public attention that might complicate his private life. While bigotry was a reality, it's also true that the jazz world often nurtured eccentricities, and many musicians quietly accepted him as he was, so long as the public eye didn't pry too far. His compositions, brimming with emotional nuance, might reflect the tension he faced, yearning for the freedom to be himself in a world that seldom permitted it. Friends described Strayhorn as gracious and witty, a man who loved entertaining at home with elaborate dinners, yet never insisted on being recognized as a leading figure. He died in 1967 at just 51, leaving behind an extraordinary musical legacy. Even if he remained the quiet partner to Ellington's flamboyance, his path-breaking style and understated courage remain woven into jazz's most sumptuous melodies. 10. Luther Vandross. Luther Vandross possessed a voice so warm and tender it felt like a comforting embrace. Born in New York in 1951, he refined his talent through backup singing for the likes of David Bowie and Bette Midler before catapulting to R&B stardom in the early 1980s. Tracks like Never Too Much and A House Is Not a Home showcased Vandross's romantic style, capturing hearts with velvet vocal runs that made each lyric feel personal. His success soared. Multiple Grammy Awards, platinum albums, and a reputation as the definitive balladeer of his generation. But behind the smooth ballads and polished tuxedos lay an unspoken truth. Vandross, by many trusted accounts, was a gay man who never publicly named his orientation. Gossip occasionally circulated. Fans and industry insiders speculated about the sincerity behind such profoundly emotional love songs. Yet Vandross deflected these queries, emphasizing privacy. The fear of losing commercial appeal or facing discrimination could have been formidable in the conservative music world, especially for a black male singer aiming for mainstream acceptance. Only after his passing in 2005 did close friends, including Patti LaBelle, confirm that Vandross was indeed gay. Looking back, his heartfelt ballads about longing and unrequited devotion might have offered glimpses of his inner world. Nonetheless, Vandross chose not to risk an open declaration, perhaps preserving the sanctity of his artistry and personal safety. In the end, he remains an R&B icon whose euphoric vocals continue to soundtrack countless love stories, his untold truth adding a bittersweet note to his enduring legacy. 11. Octavia Butler. Octavia Butler revolutionized science fiction by weaving together themes of race, gender, and power in new, daring ways. Born in Pasadena, California in 1947, she grew up a shy child who found solace in books and libraries. Her imagination flourished amid social and familial challenges, and she began writing at an early age. Breaking into a field dominated by white male authors, Butler refused to let her identity limit her. Novels like Kindred, Parable of the Sower, and Dawn combined searing social commentary with futuristic settings, pushing readers to question everything from genetic engineering to the nature of faith. Butler's personal life, however, remained a carefully guarded realm. She never married, had no children, and seldom spoke of any romantic partnerships. Some acquaintances believe she might have been gay or bisexual, pointing to the fluid depictions of relationships and gender in her works. Yet she never publicly addressed such speculation. Given the persistent sexism and racism she already faced, perhaps adding queer to her public identity felt like an untenable risk. Despite that reticence, Butler's stories brim with characters who upend normal expectations, protagonists who shapeshift, love across species lines, or form unconventional families. Critics often wonder if these explorations sprang from personal parallels. Was she channeling her own sense of otherness into narratives that redefine survival and belonging? We'll never know for sure. She passed away in 2006, leaving behind a legacy that has inspired a new wave of Afrofuturism and marginalized voices in speculative fiction. In her silence, Butler asserted that her imaginative universe was expansive enough to tell truths beyond any single label. 12. E. Lynn Harris. E. Lynn Harris made waves in the 1990s with novels that brought hidden facets of black gay life into the mainstream. Born in 1955 in Flint, Michigan, and raised in Arkansas, Harris initially pursued a corporate career. It was only after wrestling with the pressures of a dual life, striving to fulfill family expectations while navigating his sexuality, that he began writing the stories he could no longer keep to himself. Self-publishing his debut novel, Invisible Life, Harris discovered an eager readership. Word of mouth propelled the book into the hands of thousands who felt their own experiences mirrored in his pages. In these novels, Harris portrayed a world where professional success and glamorous parties intermingled with deep fears of exposure and rejection. Characters lived on the edge, attempting to reconcile personal desires with societal norms. At a time when open dialogue about black gay identity was scarce, Harris's approach was both empathic and honest. His works tackled friendships, romantic entanglements, and the weight of secrecy. Only after his success did Harris openly discuss his orientation, acknowledging that fictional stories drawn partly from his own life had a powerful healing effect. Yet the journey to that public admission was long and fraught with internal battles. His writing introduced countless readers to a reality they might have never otherwise encountered, bridging empathy gaps and sparking conversations in church halls and barbershops alike. Harris's literary legacy endures through novels that unearth emotional truths about being black and gay in a society that often wanted neither fully visible. 13. Glenn Burke. Glenn Burke is remembered in baseball history for co-inventing the high five. But behind that joyous gesture lay a tale of hidden struggles. Born in Oakland, California in 1952, Burke excelled in multiple sports during high school, and baseball eventually took center stage. His contagious enthusiasm led him to the Los Angeles Dodgers in 1976, where he became known as much for his dynamic spirit in the dugout as for his skills at bat. Yet while he formed friendships with teammates, the front office and management viewed his off-field life with suspicion. Behind the scenes, Burke was privately open about his attraction to men, an unthinkable admission in professional sports at the time. The Dodgers higher-ups reportedly tried to bribe him with incentives if he'd just settle down, marry, and quell any damaging gossip. Burke refused. Transferred to the Oakland Athletics, he continued to face a sport not ready to accept a gay black man. He eventually left Major League Baseball in 1979, under circumstances that strongly suggested his orientation was the chief reason for his truncated career. After baseball, Burke's life unraveled as he confronted financial strain, drug use, and the heartbreak of losing the game he loved. Only in later interviews did he openly acknowledge his identity, becoming a quiet pioneer for LGBTQ+ athletes. When he died of AIDS-related complications in 1995, the baseball world offered him belated praise, yet recognized how it had failed to champion one of its own. His story stands as a stark reminder that behind every celebratory high five, heartbreak might be lurking, particularly in a culture that punishes authenticity. 14. Richard Bruce Nugent. Richard Bruce Nugent remains one of the lesser-known luminaries of the Harlem Renaissance, yet he channeled an audacious spirit in his art and writing that belied his era's constraints. Born in 1906 in Washington, D.C., Nugent was something of a free spirit, even as a teen, drifting into Harlem's artistic circles in the 1920s. He befriended notables like Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and Wallace Thurman, who shared a vision of unapologetically exploring black identity through art. Though never a household name, Nugent's published works left an indelible mark. His short piece, Smoke, Lilies, and Jade, published in 1926 in the literary magazine Fire, was groundbreaking. It openly expressed attraction between men, weaving in dreamlike reflections on fluid sexuality. The text used a stream of consciousness style that unsettled conservative readers at the time. Nugent's frank approach to same-sex desire was a scandal, or a revelation, depending on who was reading. In an era governed by strict racial and social rules, Nugent led a bohemian lifestyle, bounding through parties and intimate gatherings with fellow queer creatives. He never masked his orientation, at least not within Harlem's underground. However, mainstream acceptance was a different matter. The Harlem Renaissance itself was often toned down for broader audiences, making someone as overt as Nugent harder to celebrate. Over time, his star dimmed, overshadowed by figures like Hughes and Countee Cullen. Yet recent scholarship has revived interest in his boundary-pushing artistry. Nugent's defiance of labels and unwavering candor predate much of the queer liberation movement, marking him as a fearless voice in a hush-hush world. 15. Countee Cullen. Countee Cullen rose swiftly as one of the Harlem Renaissance's brightest literary voices. Orphaned and taken in by Reverend Frederick Cullen, he received a refined education that shaped his polished classical writing style. His debut collection, Color, established Cullen as an articulate poet exploring themes of race, identity, and spiritual conflict. Where some contemporaries used more direct, earthy language, Cullen preferred structured form and romantic lyricism, bridging mainstream and African-American literary traditions. Yet his personal affairs were shrouded in quiet tension. Cullen's marriage to Yolande Du Bois, daughter of famed intellectual W.E.B. Du Bois, in 1928, was a grand event that seemed to cement his status as a rising black elite. But their union ended in divorce just 2 years later, spurring whispers that Cullen's heart might have lain elsewhere. Close friends hinted he harbored affections for men. Letters and intimate confessions point to unspoken desires, though he never publicly addressed these rumors. The challenge was acute. Being openly gay in the 1920s, especially for a revered poet from a devout family, carried devastating social risks. Cullen's work seldom ventured into personal confessions of orientation, opting instead for universal themes, brooding on faith, mortality, and the intricate labyrinth of racial prejudice. He continued writing until his premature death at 42. If there was a hidden dimension to his poetry, it was carefully woven in subtle metaphors. Today, many wonder how different his oeuvre might have been had he felt safe to reveal every facet of his identity. Even so, his lyrical verses remain a testament to the complexities of artistry under societal constraints. 16. Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin shaped the modern civil rights movement from behind the curtains, masterminding events like the 1963 March on Washington, the site of Martin Luther King Jr.'s historic I Have a Dream address. Born in 1912 in Pennsylvania, Rustin was raised under the Quaker ideals of nonviolence and equality. His unwavering commitment to these principles led him to study Gandhi's methods in India and later introduce King to the strategies of peaceful protest that propelled the civil rights struggle forward. Yet Rustin's open homosexuality, known among activists, made him a target. Opponents seized on it, denouncing him and threatening to undermine the cause by painting him as morally unfit. Even leaders within the movement, worried about political optics, often pushed Rustin to the sidelines. He resigned himself to a backroom role, drafting speeches, planning massive demonstrations, and training volunteers, sacrificing personal recognition for the movement's success. Later in life, Rustin refused to remain entirely hidden. He spoke out, drawing parallels between racial injustice and the broader fight for LGBTQ+ rights. Still, the damage done by decades of forced invisibility had its cost. For much of his life, he lived under threat of exposure and used caution in dealing with the public. Only years after his death in 1987 did the nation begin to fully honor his contributions. In 2013, President Obama posthumously awarded Rustin the Presidential Medal of Freedom, acknowledging him as a trailblazer who advanced liberty for all people, proving once more that social progress often rests on the selflessness of those living under multiple layers of oppression. 17. Willi Smith. Willi Smith revolutionized fashion in the 1970s and 1980s, bringing streetwear-inspired designs to the runway long before the term streetwear dominated global fashion. Born in Philadelphia in 1948, Smith studied commercial art and fashion, quickly developing a style that celebrated inclusivity. He believed that clothes should be comfortable, affordable, and accessible, an ethos evident in his brand, Willi Wear. Vibrant colors, unisex silhouettes, and playful prints turned him into one of the most significant African American designers of his generation. Yet while Smith's flamboyant design spoke volumes, he rarely discussed his personal life. He was gay, privately so, at a time when the fashions industry remained surprisingly conservative about such realities, especially for a black designer. Furthermore, the specter of HIV/AIDS hung heavily over the creative community. Smith's own death in 1987 from complications related to AIDS spurred whispers that he had kept not only his orientation but his health battle under wraps, fearing both stigma and backlash. His absence left a void. Willi Wear folded soon after his passing, depriving the industry of a brand that championed everyday folks. Smith's untimely end also forced a broader conversation about AIDS and its devastating toll on creative minds, particularly within marginalized communities. Only posthumously have critics and scholars begun to recognize how his identity may have informed his groundbreaking designs, how a desire to break boundaries in clothing might parallel his personal longing to be free. Willi Smith's legacy as an avant-garde designer who democratized style is unquestionable, even if he felt compelled to hide an essential part of who he was. Honor 18. Jackie Moms, Mabley. Jackie Moms. Mabley cracked jokes that exposed racism, sexism, and hypocrisy, all while donning a stage persona that resembled a warm but sharp-tongued grandmother. Born Loretta Mary Aiken. In 1894, she came of age in an era of intense segregation. Starting in vaudeville, Mabley built her comedic chops on what was called the Chitlin circuit, performing in clubs that catered to black audiences barred from mainstream venues. Her style was revolutionary. She talked unabashedly about politics, insisted men be held accountable, and tackled taboo subjects with a disarming grin. Behind her comedic mask, Mabley's personal reality remained deeply closeted. Though many in the entertainment world knew she was a lesbian, she never disclosed it publicly, understandably so, given the double discrimination black queer women faced. She developed a grandmotherly aesthetic to appear non-threatening, a strategy that allowed her to voice subversive truths without scaring off audiences. Mabley also navigated a cultural environment where just stepping on a stage as a black female comic was a radical act, let alone introducing any complexities about sexuality. 19. Ernest Withers. Ernest Withers used photography as both a shield and a spotlight, documenting pivotal events of the civil rights movement. Born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1922, he captured marches, voter registration drives, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at crucial moments. His images a testament to black resilience. Withers' stirring snapshots of the Montgomery bus boycott and the Memphis sanitation workers' strike turned faceless crowds into unforgettable historical figures, instilling empathy in distant observers. However, Withers' personal life included complexities rarely visible in his public persona. Rumors swirled that he concealed a gay orientation, an especially risky secret for someone entrenched in activism and journalism. The civil rights era was rife with suspicion. Any vulnerability could be exploited by law enforcement or detractors. Additionally, navigating homophobia within a largely church-centered movement would have posed a profound challenge. As a result, Withers is said to have kept this dimension of himself firmly veiled, focusing on social justice work that demanded every ounce of his courage already. 20. Robert Reed. Church rose from enslavement to become one of the wealthiest black men in 19th century America, establishing a financial empire in Memphis, Tennessee. Born in 1839, Church worked on riverboats before seizing entrepreneurial openings in real estate, banking, and business. He weathered racial violence, including the Memphis race riots, yet his resilience never wavered. Over time, Church founded Solvent Savings Bank and Trust Company, Memphis's first black-owned bank, offering African Americans vital financial resources denied elsewhere. His philanthropic ventures also showcased a visionary mind. Church contributed substantially to churches, schools, and hospitals that served underserved communities. Under his guidance, Beale Street blossomed into a cultural and economic hub for black residents. While public success defined him, Church kept his private life guarded. Rumors persisted that he shared an intimate orientation not publicly aligned with typical domestic expectations. But details remained scant, perhaps because he recognized that acknowledging same-sex relationships would erode the trust he had built with white business partners and local political figures. These 20 stories remind us that courage takes many forms, from battling racial injustice to carving out new artistic frontiers, all while safeguarding personal truths that the world wasn't ready to embrace. Which story moved you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if this deep dive stirred your curiosity, please like, share, and subscribe so we can explore more hidden chapters of history together. Thank you for watching.